Yeah, so that was a very smooth change. No roadies or anything. Yeah, thank you, Warren, for coming this evening.
My pleasure. I'm happy I'm here.
Warren's going to talk about his book, Guerrilla Tango, From Businessman to Convicted Felon and Surviving the U.S. Prison System. So, Warren, you were arrested in the Dominican Republic by Interpol.
Yes.
On a FBI warrant.
Correct.
You were held there for 8 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
and you were waiting to be extradited. So you were extradited to the Supermax security facility in New York, and you awaited sentencing there. You were finally ordered to serve another 5 years at the Federal Correctional Institution at Allenwood, Pennsylvania.
That's right.
That's serious time.
Yeah.
So what did you do?
What did I do? We got involved in a telemarketing sweepstakes scam, a very a low point in my life, and in my lovely wife's wife as well. Lana also spent 4 years in federal prison, and basically we targeted people who were buying sweepstakes leads. And we would call them up and tell them they won money, and they had to send us money to get their winnings. A despicable crime, really. Something we're very ashamed of. But a lot of the victims, unfortunately, were elderly. Not that we necessarily targeted them, but a lot of the people buying these leads were elderly victims. And as a result, the U.S. government didn't look too kindly on it, and they basically, gave us a pretty significant sentence. At least in my case, pretty significant. So I had a 75-month sentence, and I served net 5.5 years all told.
Okay, and you were released. When was the book released?
I released it September, just 2 months ago, September 16th.
Okay, and when were you released?
I was released in January 16th.
Okay, so
of this year, 2018.
Some 16 thing going on.
Yeah,
right?
I didn't just.
Yeah, so,
wasn't planned.
Right. So you wrote most of this book inside.
Right. I had 11 months left on my sentence, and I don't know what made me start just writing. I was, maybe initially bored, but I wanted to. It started off as a composition. I had never written anything before. I didn't know if I could write. I mean, I knew from years. I was a businessman for many years, so I knew I was pretty good at writing, presentations so I started writing, and. I worked on it every day, and by the time I left in January, I had something significant, substantial. It was about 34 chapters written.
Okay.
So I came home to Montreal. I was determined to finish it at that point, and my plan was to finish it by March, but I forgot. I was locked up so long, I forgot what real life is like.
Right.
Go to the store, do this, pick this up.
Right.
So I only finished it in July.
Okay.
Yeah.
So. Inside, you don't have access to computers. Well, you have access to computers, but it's limited, right?
Right. There's a bank of computers just for email access. It's monitored email access.
Right, and there's no cell phones.
No.
And it's noisy.
Yeah.
And you share your cell with a bunkie.
Right.
And there are gangs and all sorts of things going on. Describe the actual challenge you had, writing the book.
Okay, so I guess the first place, like you said, Ian, there's really you don't have computers with word processing programs, so you can't cut and paste and edit. So you type something, if you choose to do it that way, which I did. But what I would do is, I'd wake up every morning at 5 a.m. When you're in prison, they count you a lot. So there's a 5 o'clock in the morning count. And I would then go get a coffee, and I'd start writing. And I'd write it longhand, with a pen and paper, which is another challenge.
Yeah, it's old school, right?
Right, it's old school, and they're not exactly forthcoming with paper.
Right.
So you got to find a way to get pads of paper to write. So you walk over to the officer's bubble, they call it, office. Excuse me, CO, can I get some paper, please? And he'll take a pad and tear off 3 sheets.
Right.
So when you're in prison, you got to figure out how to be resourceful. So I'd get different guys to go in and get me more paper. Or I'd wait for a CO that was in a good mood and hit him up for a pad or 2.
Right.
And so even that was a challenge. But I would write it on paper, and then when I thought I had something that was, okay, so I'd start typing it on the computer.
And you didn't want them to know that you're writing a book?
No, I would save it as a draft. I definitely couldn't send it in an email because all emails are monitored. If they found out I was writing a book, probably what would have happened is I would have been taken to special holding unit, which is solitary confinement, and then probably put on what they call diesel therapy. They send you all over the country, and they make it impossible for you to do anything, right, let alone write a book. So I had to keep it secret. So I would write the chapter, I would save it as a draft on the computer, and then I would print it. Now printing sounds like, hit print and it comes out. No, you have to go to a whole other building where the printer is. You got to put in a code. It comes out. And now I had something. So then I would make photocopies, multiple photocopies, and then I would mail it out, 2 or 3 different copies to different people, family members, to make sure that at least one of them got out, so that when I got home, and I used to stress about this incredibly because, you work so hard on it.
Yeah.
And if they ever knew or saw it, they would have taken it for sure.
Okay. In the book, you write about surviving the U.S. justice system, and you describe something called the Customer Retention Program. Now, how does that work?
That's my sarcastic attempt at cynicism and my take on it.
We have one of those. But
when I first got locked up in MCC, New York, which is, it's a supermax detention facility in Manhattan, and it was a real rough place, but guys would say, yeah, it's a business to the government. And I would look at them and go, what do you mean a business? It costs them money to keep us. It's about $27,000 a year to house an inmate. How can it be a business? And I didn't understand, but eventually I began to understand there's really no rehabilitation. The U.S. government has, more prisoners, more inmates than most countries combined. There's like over 2 million people incarcerated in the United States. I met a lot of people who shouldn't be in prison. And I suspect that here in Canada, I don't even know if I would have gone to prison, even though personally I feel I deserved it.
Right.
But I would call it the Customer Retention Program because everybody is set up to fail. There isn't anything they do that makes it simple for somebody to get out, be rehabilitated, and have a chance at life after.
And the tension is kept high.
Always, purposely.
Yeah.
Purposely. Things, Ian and I talked, and I explained there's microwave ovens, and there's 200 people on a unit, and they have one microwave oven, and so everybody's in line, and of course everybody fights break out. There's all kinds of problems. The COs, we call them cops when you're in prison, come running in and they cart people off to the hole, and they make it so that there's always a tremendous amount of stress, and they set everybody up to be in situations. I mean, people are have a lot of problems when they're in there, and they can't control anything. They've got problems on the street with their family, so there's a lot of it's a very explosive environment, and so they're constantly putting people in situations that lead to that.
Right. Okay, so you gave me this book. I read this book, and the experience that I had. When you're reading a book, it reads like a novel. So when you're reading a book that it's described in first person, his experience, or the author's experience, if it's done well, it becomes your experience. So when you think about scenes in the book, it's like think of memories. So, you effectively took me to prison for a while.
I'm sorry.
But really, it's okay. And
I really don't wish it on you,
I'm thanking
or
you.
Anybody.
I'm thanking you for that because I appreciate freedom a lot more.
Absolutely.
I realize things could be a lot worse, and
And something I used to tell myself all the time.
Yeah.
Even though I was in a bad situation, it could be worse.
Right. So what's your take on freedom now? Now you're out.
Oh, my take on freedom now. Yeah, I think about this a lot, actually. Probably the best comparison or analogy for me is, and hopefully a lot of you are young, and hopefully it hasn't happened, but I think back at times in my life when I lost a friend or a family member at too young an age. Something tragic that happened. And it's it's, you know, overwhelming, and everybody's like in shock, and you go to a funeral and there's a sermon, and you know, I'd be in business, and you know, when you're in business, you think every phone call and every email is the most important thing on earth. And then suddenly there's a situation like that. You say, you know, everybody collectively, you could look around and see that everybody's thinking, you know, look how we live our lives, you know, worried about all the wrong things. And then, you know, you leave the funeral and the phone rings, and then, you know, 15 minutes later, I forgot about what I said, you know, about, you know, life. But after prison, I live every single day like it's my last day. I have such an appreciation for life, for family, for the people I love, the people that love me, and just the time. You get a real, you know, you get a real sense of time, or time lost. You know, you're so non-productive for the period of time I was locked up, and it's just, and that will never go away.
Right.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Yeah. You write about your family a lot, and you write about the remorse and the shame. And you, in the book at the end, well, I'm not going to give it away, but you write something about leaving a legacy, for the legacy that you want to leave for your kids. How's it going with the family since you've been out?
Yeah, so it's great. I mean, you know, lucky that we're a close, loving family to start with. I have 4 children, and you know, our youngest were young when this happened. I mean, well, 16 and 14, and then, you know, my oldest is 29 now, but they were phenomenal during this whole harrowing experience. But for me, it was, I couldn't let the shameful crime that we committed and the experience be my legacy to them. And so I try, every single day, and I work hard to create a different legacy. And for me, that's what the book was about. It's not financial. The book was about, you know, first of all, telling the real story, because, you know, the story people heard is always twisted by the media, and, you know, the things they write, you know, is always, but it was a legacy. You see, really, to be honest with you, you asked me about a 6-year prison sentence. It's nothing compared to the life sentence of shame and regret and remorse I have to live. Because not a day goes by where I don't think about the people I hurt, including my family, because I hurt them too. And I don't know if it'll ever go away.
Right.
So it's big, it's bigger than regret.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is your first holiday period with your family since you've been out. Right?
Yes.
6 years.
Yes, it is.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Good. Listen, has anyone got any quick questions? Yes, we got. Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
I just want to know, you named your book Gorilla Tango. Does that something relate that you find prison? Why did you name your book that?
Yeah, to me the whole experience was so overwhelming. And when I thought about a title, actually as I was writing it, it was like trying to dance with a gorilla and getting whipped all over the room and thrown about. Like it's just so, the experience, the prison system, the dealing with the people who run the prison system, all of it, it's like trying to dance with a gorilla. And you don't have a chance. So that's the name of the book, yeah.
Great. Is there anyone else? Oh, okay.
I'm reading the book right now. So, well, if you guys don't know, well, just a little thing. It happened. Something's happened in the Dominican Republic, and I saw you learn the language. And from my perspective, it seems that you got quite connected with the culture, if you may call it. Did you feel that connection, or is that that's why I saw that in your book, or it's maybe just me?
No, you're 100% right. We moved there. We moved to Santo Domingo, and we loved living there. And I was, I guess I was 50 years old. I didn't speak a word of Spanish, but I learned, as you know, I'm pretty fluent now. So, yeah, and our kids went to the American School of Santo Domingo there, and they speak fluent Spanish, and we absolutely loved the lifestyle there. So we are very connected, yeah. I am very connected for sure, yeah.
Well, you have the book in stock, and Veronica's reading it right now. I've read it. I suggest you borrow it, buy it, suggest it, recommend it. It's a great book, and just thank you so much for coming. And,
Thank you.
and
Thanks
telling
for
us about it, you know.
putting up with me.